J'ouvre maintenant la séance. Welcome to
I declare the session open.
the skills, social development, and the status of persons with disabilities. The committee is meeting today on government mandates and key priorities for the first hour, and on the impacts of the temporary foreign worker program on the labor market for the second hour. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Members are attending in person, and they are attending remotely using Zoom. For this hour, all participants will be in person in the room. The clerk has advised me we do have a quorum. And yeah, nobody appearing virtually. I would like to, before we begin, you have the option of choosing to participate in the official language of your choice. Please make sure you're on the right channel if you're in the room for the language of your choice that you wish to participate in. I would also remind all those appearing to silence your devices so that we do not interrupt the proceedings. And please refrain from tapping on the microphone boom for the protection of the translators. As well, please direct all questions through I, the chair, and wait until I recognize you by name before you participate. Appearing today is the Honorable Gregor Robertson, Minister of Housing and Infrastructure. And appearing with him is the Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Andre Charbonneau. Department of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities, Deputy Minister Paul Halusha, as well as Luc Robitaille, Deputy Chief Financial Officer. Also, what do we have? We have from the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, Joël Huppé, Chief Financial and Administrative Officer. The witness, we'll only be hearing from one, has 5 minutes. So, Minister Robertson, you have 5 minutes for your opening statement, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee. One moment, please.
Je m'excuse.
I'm sorry. Thank you for having invited me. I'm happy to talk about my mandates and priorities and the supplementary budget. With me is Paul Haluka, Deputy Minister of Housing and Infrastructure and Communities. As Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, I have clear objectives: make housing more affordable through public-private partnerships, modernize and make residential construction industry more productive, create new careers in the trades, and invest in infrastructure and essential infrastructure.
Is to focus on what matters: housing and homelessness, public transit, major infrastructure projects, disaster mitigation, and green, rural, and northern infrastructure across the country. And our government knows that every home depends on the infrastructure that keeps communities functional, such as water, sewer, stormwater management systems. And that's why, alongside building more homes, we are committed to investing in housing-enabling infrastructure that supports both the growth of existing and new neighborhoods. Now, I'll take a few minutes to explain how our investments, our policies, and programs work together to achieve positive housing outcomes for Canadians. Since 2017, the National Housing Strategy has created over 183,000 new housing homes and protected over 359,000 community housing units. And additionally, since its launch in 2019, Reaching Home, which is Canada's homelessness strategy, has connected over 200,000 people with homelessness prevention supports, like emergency short-term rental assistance and mediation, and it has helped over 110,000 people attain stable housing. And building on this important work, September the 14th, the Prime Minister and I launched Build Canada Homes. And Build Canada Homes is mandated to scale up the supply of affordable housing across Canada, backed by an initial capitalization of $13 billion. This is just the beginning of that investment through Build Canada Homes to drive also a more productive and innovative home building sector by leveraging public lands, federally and controlled land in particular, deploying flexible financial tools to finance more home building, and acting as a catalyst for modern methods of construction. As the construction ramps up, we will grow, train, and support Canada's skilled workforce and create good-paying jobs along the way. As Build Canada Homes focuses on investments in affordable housing, Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, or CMHC, will continue to contribute to the well-being of Canada's housing system through existing programs like the Apartment Construction Loan Program, mortgage loan insurance products, MLI Select being the best known. In addition to this important work in the housing and homelessness space, I'm committed to supporting the key public infrastructure that Canadians need and use every day. Budget 2025 proposed the Build Communities Strong Fund, which will provide over $51 billion over 10 years, starting in 26-27, and $3 billion a year ongoing in new and existing funding. The Build Communities Strong Fund will include new initiatives like the Health Infrastructure Fund to support communities where they need it the most. And the existing Canada Community Building Fund, or CCBF, will be rebranded as the dedicated community stream within the Build Community Strong Fund. It will continue to support a broad range of infrastructure needs for Canada's communities. The Build Community Strong Fund will also support housing enabling infrastructure through, alongside programs like the Canada Housing Infrastructure Fund, or CHIF, which has been in place for a number of years, as well as Canada Public Transit Fund, or CPTF for short. Those investments in public transit, including active transportation, there's climate adaptation funding as well, will continue to be among my key priorities. In addition, we're making important investments to increase community resilience to natural disasters and extreme weather events. And this same commitment to resilience guides my approach across all of housing and infrastructure. I'm prioritizing federal investments to build complete, connected, and resilient communities where everyone has access to a home that they can afford. And I look forward to answering your questions. Merci à tous. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister. We will begin by first welcoming back Mr. Aitchison to the committee. Mr. Aitchison, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Minister, for coming. I want to get right into it. You indicated that removing the GST from all new homes under $1.3 million was too sweeping a measure. Yet the CMHC reports that we need to be building about 480,000 homes a year, and your government, in fact, during the campaign, promised to do 500,000 homes a year, and yet starts have stalled, basically. So given the scale of the housing crisis, could you tell this committee what concrete benchmarks your government is using to decide whether the incremental steps you've announced if they're going to work, if they are working, and if you need to take bigger steps?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. So the initial commitment to implement a first-time home buyers GST break is still not through the House, as members will know. We want to see that implemented as soon as possible because it will create opportunity for first-time home buyers, up to 50,000 first-time home buyers to access housing, save $50,000
Minister,
on
I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second. I don't need you to describe the programs to me. I'm reasonably familiar with them. What I want to know is what benchmarks are you using to determine whether you need to do more than just the first-time home buyers rebate?
Well, the focus initially to the member is to provide that support to first-time home buyers, to young Canadians who can't access the market currently. That should be our first priority right now, is to make sure we get an affordability measure to young Canadians during these times. And that's a significant investment, about $4 billion worth of tax revenue.
What kind of numbers do you need to see for you to know that's working?
Well, the numbers that we look at CMHC is our top source of research and data. They have a significant team that provides that for the industry and obviously for governments. And CMHC data reflects the realities across the country, as well as market data that we see as well. And obviously, it's important to track all of it. The housing starts are different in different markets across the country. Obviously, the GTA and Vancouver are very low in terms of housing starts right now, but other markets are doing very well.
Okay, thanks, Minister.
Alberta.
It's clear that you don't actually have a number or any benchmark that you're going to share with us now. But let's go back to that interview. In that same interview, you said, and I quote, "We can't roll the dice with some of these bigger moves. We'll try some incremental steps and see if they make a difference. If they don't, then maybe we will have to make some bigger moves." Builders are telling us that pre-sales are collapsing right now, particularly in the GTA and the Lower Mainland. Projects are being shelved. Employees are being laid off. So how does the government justify waiting for results when these delayed decisions mean thousands of job losses and fewer homes getting built?
Through the chair, I think the most troubling is the delays that the member's party has done to this first-time homebuyers tax break. It has been before the House of Commons since June. It still is not through due to the procedural delays that the opposition has put forward. That's held back an opportunity to provide up to $50,000 per first-time homebuyer to get the housing market going. And as I said, it's different in different markets. So providing a broad GST break in markets that are doing very well, for example, in Montreal or in some of the markets on the prairies.
Minister, I just want to stop you. I just want to stop you for 1 second because you're trying to put the blame here on conservatives, but the fact of the matter is the situation is dire. You would agree that we're in a housing crisis?
I agree, we're in a housing crisis. That's why we shouldn't be delaying the first-time
I guess my
homebuyers
question then
tax.
is, how if it is in fact a crisis, what on earth makes you think that incremental steps and waiting to see what happens is a good approach?
Through the chair, when I speak of incremental, $13 billion for Build Canada Homes is a massive, it's an unprecedented investment strictly in non-market affordable housing. $1 billion into transitional supportive housing because homelessness is a crisis. We are focused on where we have a crisis and those direct interventions with significant investment. As I outlined with the National Housing Strategy and with Reaching Home, these are the largest investments Canada has ever made in homelessness and affordable housing, and we're taking it to the next level. We need the rest of the House to support.
If we need
advancing
500,000 units
breaks.
a year, if we need 500,000 units a year for the next several years, which your government promised to do, which the Prime Minister promised during the campaign, we're talking about trillions with a T of investment in housing. So $13 billion might seem big to you, but we know full well that one of the biggest impediments to getting homes started and getting homes built is the cost of local government and the delays at the local level, particularly in the Lower Mainland and the GTA, where this is the epicenter of the housing crisis. It's where the situation is, in fact, the worst. Economists like Mike Moffat, who has advised your government on a number of occasions on housing, has warned that without decisive action, Canada risks a prolonged construction slowdown and an even deeper supply gap. If the government is so reluctant to make a big move, and I will challenge you that $13 billion is not a big move, what's your plan what's your plan to get the private sector moving again and building in some of these centers where it's too expensive?
Yeah, well, the private sector is delivering a lot of housing in most of the Canadian markets. It's Vancouver and Toronto that are challenged, and that's where the first-time homebuyers tax can make a real impact. That's where apartment construction loan program is delivering record levels of rental housing, working with the private sector very directly through CMHC. We're seeing housing starts about 4.6% up year to date versus last year. So the industry is building right now. We have to be looking forward several years.
Thank you.
And that means investing significantly.
Thank you, Mr. Aitchison. Monsieur Joseph. Monsieur Joseph? Monsieur Joseph, for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Congratulations to you for your work. As you know, I'm the member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. In my riding, there is an unprecedented homelessness crisis that has lasted for 6 years. I've only been here for 6 months, and you've been on the job for maybe 6 to 7 months. Everyone is looking at our government. The 2020-25 budget announced $1 billion for transitional measures with care. When I talk about care, I'm talking about services. But before that, we had a program called Operation Reach Home. Community organizations that help these people are wondering, is that $1 billion the continuity, or will it replace Operation Come Home? Thank you.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for your question.
English. With Reaching Home, which has reached almost 10,000 projects across the country since 2019 to date, and as I mentioned before, about 200,000 people who have been assisted with services, 110,000 who have been found stable housing through Reaching Home. We're looking at the future with that program in addition to the $1 billion that is part of Build Canada Homes. Build Canada Homes is focusing on transitional supportive housing using modular technology. So we want to see these built as soon as possible with modern methods of construction. We have great models, examples of this in Toronto with Dunn House, in Parkdale neighborhood, which has those, as the member describes, wraparound health services. We need the provinces to provide the funding for the wraparound services, and those are critical for supportive housing. So we're looking at finding provinces to match our capital, as well as getting these built as quickly as possible with factory-built solutions. Those are many examples across the country that we can pursue as well. Many of the communities that you serve in and represent here, including Longueuil, have agreements under Reaching Home. Funding is being provided to address the challenges we have with homelessness. We need to continue to invest through programs like Reaching Home and the related programs, the Veteran Homelessness Program being another that provides about $73 million in funding support. We need to continue these programs, take the best of our learnings to those programs, as well as add this Build Canada Homes component of an additional $1 billion for supportive housing.
C'est une bonne nouvelle, si je comprends bien, parce que
That's great news. If I understand correctly, Operation Come Home will continue beyond 2028, right?
That is my hope. Obviously, it's at the will of the members of the House of Commons, but certainly I see, if anything, this government scaling up our work to solve homelessness. The challenge continues to be very difficult to solve. We need to do that at all levels of government. And in my past, we tried to do everything we could at the city level, at the local level, which was very difficult without federal and provincial support. We need all levels of government to be investing to solve homelessness. And ultimately, the solutions are the appropriate housing, the supportive housing that ensures that the social and health services are there so people can get into stable housing and turn their lives around. It's very difficult to do that from shelters in the street.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre, et je vais continuer. Est-ce que
Thank you. Is that $1 billion new funding or additional funding for existing programs?
That will be, if the Budget Implementation Act is passed, that will be new funding that will be focused on investing in housing for supportive housing for people who are homeless or at risk of homelessness right now. So that's in addition to the Reaching Home and the veteran homelessness programs, the Unsheltered Homeless and Encampments Initiative. There's funding in those programs continuing, and the $1 billion is an additional investment in supportive housing that's transitional.
OK. Comment ces montants sera
How will this amount be allocated over the course of the next few years?
Is the member referring to the $1 billion in Build Canada Homes?
Oui, j'ai fait référence au montant.
Yes, I'm talking about the program for Build Canada Homes and the transition housing programs.
So my expectation is that we will move that investment as quickly as possible. As soon as that we can find partners, proponents that are ready to build transitional supportive housing, we will be investing there. So we need to move fast with this. There are people, it's winter hitting across Canada. We need to be building as soon as possible the supportive housing that helps to alleviate the homelessness challenge. So that will be a really top priority for me to advance as quickly as possible.
Minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, Mr. Minister. You know that housing is something that a lot of people are interested in. It also creates a lot of hope amongst them. I have a question about the size of projects. Build Canada Homes also builds hope, but a lot of stakeholders, for example, mayors, want to know whether smaller municipalities can also receive funding. For example, there are these big projects in Longueuil and in other regions, but not in other parts of the country. For example, would it be possible for communities to have these 20 to 40 units? Because right now, they don't see how they can benefit from this.
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for your question. Absolutely.
In communities of all shapes and sizes through Build Canada Homes. Initially, I think what mayors and others saw in our market sounding guide in August, we were testing 300 homes and up for projects or portfolios of projects at that scale or larger. And what we heard back from Canadians across the country was we need smaller projects. Smaller communities can build smaller projects that have a very big impact in their community. So we have adjusted. There is no limit. There's no floor to the scale of projects. What we are seeing from some of the proposals coming in are provinces, in the case of New Brunswick, who I met with the housing minister last week, where they're bundling a number of small projects with communities. Some of them are 4 homes in a building, and some are larger, obviously, but they are bundling and bringing a whole proposal forward as a portfolio, which will be easier to administer.
That's what we hope for smaller projects. I don't want to interrupt you, Mr. Minister, but I don't have a lot of time. And I will send you some more questions so you can respond to them in writing. Along the same vein, I also have other fears. I don't know how you can respond to them, but you talked about construction time and that it's not the same seasons across Canada and Quebec. I have a question about prices because the costs are also different. For example, in my writing, construction costs are 30% higher. So that worries people because in for them, they will have less homes built per amount, the same amount of fund. So can you respond to that to ensure there's going to be fairness for Quebecers? Thank you.
Merci pour la question. It's
Thank you for your question.
bigger challenge for remote communities and in the north, where the transportation costs to build housing and the shortage of workers in many communities mean that we have to move a lot of materials and tradespeople into those communities to build, which is a much higher cost.
En tout respect aussi, Monsieur le ministre, et évidemment, je suis au courant.
With all due respect, I am cognizant of the additional funds, but how would your department respond to this situation? Thank you.
Looking at every proposal on its merits, very important for proposals is that there is strong partnerships. So the local government, indigenous communities, but also private sector builders. I think in most cases these will be built by private sector, as well as nonprofit operators. It's important that these partnerships are strong, making the case for a project. But I think Build Canada Homes will be recognizing that it will be more expensive per home in remote communities. That doesn't slow us down. We need to build in remote communities and make sure that we see success.
Une dernière question, ça en fait juste trois.
Last question. The bloc critic for housing, Mr. Gabriel Semari, says hi, and he has a question about the Laurentide MSC for a social trust fund that has an innovative project that has received an award. That MRC includes 20 cities and municipalities. It responds to the needs of workers and students. And they're ready to move forward with that project. But your department has not provided them with an answer since October 5th. They also haven't heard back from Build Canada Homes, nor the CMHC, nor your team. So that was 2 months ago, and they're wondering if they're eligible for Build Canada Homes funding.
Through the chair, so I would be happy to see the project details. The Build Canada Homes portal just opened earlier this week, so it's now taking projects and proposals in through the website portal. So Build Canada Homes is launched and now has the portal open. I'd encourage them to basically put a proposal into the portal there, but also if you can send something to me direct, that would be fantastic, and we'll make sure.
Bien sûr, on pourrait faire le suivi. Je pense que ça avait déjà été envoyé, mais
of course, we can definitely do a follow-up. I think it was already sent, but it would be good to know if they are eligible. Thank you, Madam Gill.
I have Mr. Ho.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, your department back in October spent about $97,000 on a getaway to get some inspiration on the homelessness crisis. And we know the homelessness crisis is a crisis. You just admitted that in your testimony. And I just want to read, were you aware of this conference?
Yes, through to the member, I did speak at that conference in Montreal, the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness Summit, which is the largest gathering of people working on homelessness.
Do you think that was a good use of money?
Alors, Monsieur le Président, ce n'est pas le sujet du...
Point of order. Point of order. Okay. Hello, this is the interpreter speaking. This is the interpreter speaking. This is the interpreter speaking? Huh? This is the interpreter speaking. Can you hear the interpreter? Can you hear the interpreter? Yes? Okay.
Time is from the beginning?
From the beginning.
Okay, thank you. So back in October, officials from your department spent $97,000 on a getaway for on a conference to get inspiration on the homelessness crisis. And you had just admitted in your earlier testimony that it's a crisis. And of course, it's a crisis that's caused by this Liberal government. Were you aware of this crisis? Or were you aware of this $97,000 being spent on this conference?
I attended the conference, spoke at the conference, and met with a number of Government of Canada staff who were at the conference, which is the most significant homelessness conferences.
Get the $97,000 to. I'm going to read the purpose of it. According to the documents we have, the purpose of this conference is to arm policymakers, funders, researchers, advocates, community leaders, and frontline workers with inspiration, end quote. Do you think that's a good use of money?
Through the chair, I think it's the most important homelessness conference in the country, and that's consistent with the funding that's been allocated in previous years to make sure that the Government of Canada is present and represented, and the programs that we provide can be communicated.
Do you feel inspired? The purpose was to get inspiration, so do you feel inspired?
I think the purpose was for education. It was also for the number of our programs to be able to meet with all of the local proponents. All the organizations that work on homelessness were able to connect to
Gone to
our
a homeless
employees.
shelter in Ottawa, or maybe back home in Vancouver. We know homelessness was up 38% while you were Vancouver's mayor. Maybe it would have been better just to visit a homeless shelter, or it would have been better use of money or abuse of time.
Excuse me, we do have translation again as an issue. It's just in English. Okay, is it now being interpreted to French? Your time has paused. Testing, testing. Are you interpreting to French? It's good? Okay. Continue, Mr. Ho.
The minister can answer the question.
It's a very important conference for our government staff who administer the programs. When we're
you'd rather
investing
go
billions of
On an
dollars
inspirational
to
retreat
do the work,
rather
we need to
than
connect with the people
maybe
who do
visit
the
an
work.
actual shelter and see what the problems are with the folks that are.
Many of us
experiencing
that
homelessness.
that work on this homelessness initiative have visited shelters, understand
Okay,
it on the
so
ground. This is
I'm
the
going to
largest
continue
gathering,
moving
a
now.
conference
So
of people working
I'm not
on
getting
it.
an answer from you, so I'm going to move to the next question. So
I'm giving you an
your
answer.
department officials admit that you faked a $32,000 construction site on TV for cameras when the Prime Minister made a housing announcement a few months ago. Do you think that's a good use of money?
Through the chair, well, that's incorrect as well. Those homes were constructed on the site. The whole purpose with modular housing is it can be put together and taken apart readily.
They were disassembled
One of those
afterwards.
homes was sent to Nunavut
Could it not have
immediately
gone to-
thereafter.
could it-
The other
could you
was
not-
taken apart and moved to another site where it was constructed.
You spent $32,000 on it, which you could have, at least go to an existing site and then maybe do the photo op there. But you chose to build one just to disassemble it, and then $32,000 now. That could be used towards a down payment for a young family. Actually, $32,000 after 10 years of this Liberal government is no longer enough for a down payment. So you don't think that you could have gone to an existing backdrop, maybe an existing construction site as a backdrop?
Demonstrate the effectiveness of modular housing, that it can be put together quickly on a site and moved off of the site. That modular home went to Nunavut, where it is. We're doing 700 homes with the government of
I'm not getting
Nunavut
it.
that are
So-
modular builds.
I want to go into the latest Parliamentary Budget Watchdog report, which they said, quote, the government has not yet laid out any plan to achieve their goal, their housing goal. And your election campaign promised to build 500,000 homes a year, double it, by adding an extra 250,000 homes per year. And the latest report said it's just going to build 5,000 homes per year over the next 5 years. Do you see that as progress? I mean, that's only, 2% of the target reach? Do you think that's progress?
Through the chair, the PBO report does not take into account all of the housing programs that are currently operating. It's strictly looked at the Build Canada Homes investment of $13 billion, and when you gross that up to the number of homes that will be built, it came up about 87,000 homes from that $13 billion is what their estimate is. It did not account for all of the housing investments that are being made.
$500,000 per year. So over 5 years, that'll be 2.5 million homes. I mean, that's still a drop in the bucket. Do you agree?
No, I don't. I don't agree with the assumptions made in that report, which do not account for all of the housing programs that this government
liberal mouthpiece that's giving the report.
No, the report does not account for all of the housing programs, such as the National Housing Strategy, our largest housing program. The numbers for that are not included going forward in that report. So it disregards that this government is very committed to affordable housing and we're already in a renewal process with the National Housing Strategy, working with provincial and territorial ministers. We made a commitment about that with those ministers in September this year.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Ho. I would remind members again, it's your time that you're questioning, but please give the person you direct the question a reasonable amount of time to answer for the benefit of the interpreters who have to interpret. But it is your time, but the rules say give a reasonable amount of time and not to be interrupting. Madame de Rocher, pour 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here, Mr. Minister, and thank you for all your work on this critical file.
And our steel workers and our industries are currently going through rough times, right? And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about how the investment policy and the approach that our government is taking to Build Canada Home is going to support the industry, the workers, and really catalyze some of the demand from those sectors.
So with the Build Canada Homes investments, the $13 billion that is before us in Budget 2025, we are looking at Buy Canadian criteria. So proposals that are coming in will be considered by the Investment Committee based upon affordability and scale. We want to obviously see both of those significant affordability and as much scale and positive impact on their community. But we want Buy Canadian. We want materials from Canada wherever possible. Canadian wood, ideally, given the challenges faced by the softwood industry. We have Canadian steel and Canadian aluminum that make great building products as well. Overall, modern methods of construction are a priority for Build Canada Homes, and there are over 800 companies across Canada that are doing manufacturing of different components of housing. Sometimes, like in the Nunavut housing example, from the launch, those are volumetric or they're entire modular homes. In other cases, they're panels or they're kitchen and bath pods, different components of homes that are manufactured. We want those to be manufactured in Canada, Canadian jobs, Canadian supply chain. So whenever the materials can be Canadian produced, that is going to be an advantage for our economy, and obviously we'll make those proposals. They'll be better received, let me put it that way, versus those that don't have Canadian materials. So we're making that a very clear message in the investment policy that is on the portal and the Build Canada Homes website, making sure that all of the partners, the proponents bringing their projects forward, understand we want Buy Canadian with our investments here.
Thank you very much, Minister, for the question. My next question is for Deputy Minister Halucha, actually. So there's been a lot of comment about how we're doing too much, investing too much, not doing enough. And I would just like to hear from your perspective, having spent over 20 years in the public service myself and understanding what it takes to put a program like Build Canada Home together. I'd like you to comment on the sense of urgency and speed that you have felt over the last few months to launch all of this over the last few weeks.
Thank you very much for the question. I can certainly attest to the fact that we felt a lot of urgency in terms of getting the new agency up and running and operational. So it's, conventionally wisdom is it's around 18 months to get an operating agency up. And so the fact that, in the same calendar year, actually in roughly half of that, of the calendar year, we moved from sort of early design on what the agency could do and, develop an investment policy, established a transition team, and they're now in the place in a situation where they are, as the minister noted, accepting projects through a portal. It's a pretty extraordinary turnaround time.
Very much for this. Minister, maybe if we can talk a little bit about another of the investment policy criteria, which is around ensuring sustainable material is used, ensuring sustainability, and really working hand in hand on our agenda with respect to fighting climate change.
Thank you for the question. That is also a very important element in the investment policy. The criteria around sustainability and climate resilience is front and center for us. We want to make sure everything that's built going forward, funded in part by the Government of Canada, is built for the climate challenges that we face. So the siting is important. Where we build is very important. We're not building in vulnerable areas. How we build is very important in that we want to see low embodied carbon materials. Canadian steel is one of the lowest carbon steel supplies in the world. Obviously, Canadian wood, very low carbon materials, and great building technologies that are Canadian IP that we want to support in this to address the climate challenge. Energy efficiency is obviously critical across the board. We want to make sure we're on our net zero trajectory. Housing and the housing-related infrastructure need to contribute to that success, and that's a combination of reducing impact on climate, but also in making sure we're more resilient with everything we build.
Madame Gill, pour 2 minutes et 30.
Skill, 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions on homelessness for you, Mr. Minister, because we know that the crisis is only worsening. We're wondering, why did you stop providing funding to the Encampment Response Fund? According to studies on the ground in Quebec, 3,000 people will lose support, and 69% of organizations have said that they will be heavily impacted, and their ability to support them will be also heavily impacted. Thank you.
Through to the member, thanks for your question. That program was a 2-year program. We're looking at what next steps we can take. The initial step here is to fund transitional supportive housing. We know people that are in tent encampments need to access housing, and that is the solution. So we're pushing hard for those partnerships with the provinces. I met with the Quebec Minister of Housing this week, Ministre Proulx, and we've got our shoulders to the wheel together to make sure we move fast on delivering support on the supportive housing and also on the Reaching Home program and other housing investments that we want to make together.
Merci. J'essaie en 1 minute. Une dernière question, mais sinon vous pouvez répondre.
Thank you. A final question. If you don't have enough time, you can answer in writing. We also wonder whether federal funding will be increased when you take into consideration the fact that Quebec and other cities see more homelessness. And it's also the priority of many members.
Absolutely. We want to see investment scale up to solve homelessness and the affordable housing crunch more broadly. We are working closely now with Quebec on the next steps with Build Canada Homes, as well as the existing programs that we have together. I will say, to your earlier question, student housing is part of Build Canada Homes as well. We want to see student housing proposals come forward. We've had lots of interest. Utile has been one organization we've talked to a number of times now. We want to see that work scale up because many students have to live in the community and obviously need access to affordable housing as well.
10 secondes, madame.
C'est merveilleux.
Yeah, 10 seconds left. 10 seconds. Great. Does the CMHC plan to update studies on construction to ensure that affordability will be returned following the update on the immigration plan?
That answer
Oui.
in writing.
Yeah, we can come back on writing. Yeah.
Madame, we now go to Madame Cobena for 5 minutes. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are for Minister Robertson. Thank you for being here and for giving us your time. I represent the riding of Newmarket Aurora. In Newmarket, particularly, we do have a homelessness problem. And I have to ask you about this $97,000 spent. I cannot find a way to justify this to the people in my riding that see it. They see the people, our neighbors on the streets and struggling to find home and shelter and food. I can't walk up to them and say, I know you're homeless, but it's okay. We spend $97,000 or the minister spent $97,000 to learn about it. How do you suggest I justify that to the people in my riding?
Through the chair, so the investment in government staff who were attending, and in many cases making contact with many of the homeless providers and support services. These are Government of Canada employees who are there to help
it's not an investment.
assist.
It's not an investment. It's
They're
an expense.
making sure
it's not an
that we are
investment.
connected
it's not
to
gonna
the
create
people on the ground who are doing the work on homelessness.
There's not going to be an asset. It's not an investment. It's an expense. It's an expense. We're not going to see a return on that money. It's not an investment. And I have to justify it to the people in my riding. $97,000 spent to learn about homelessness. How do I tell a constituent of mine who is homeless that your government spent $97,000 learning about how he is homeless?
Through the chair, so the Government of Canada is investing billions of dollars in solutions to homelessness. We need the people who work for the Government of Canada to be connected on the ground to all the people who are doing the work, who are operating shelters, who are helping people into supportive housing. We want to make sure we're well informed and well connected to the large community of people who support people
Minister,
who are homeless.
My question is quite
that's
simple.
why we had a large
very
attendance
simple,
there.
very narrow. How do I justify that expense to my constituent?
We need to be sure we are connected to the people who serve the homeless population across Canada. We need to make sure we're effective in rolling out our new Build Canada Homes program with supportive housing. There were a lot of meetings, there was a lot of information shared, there were a lot of relationships built with the people who are serving across Canada, the communities that are challenged with homelessness like yours. We want to make sure we're connected and doing the good work.
A lavish conference, travels, meetings upon meetings, it's not going to solve this gentleman's problem that I'm speaking about. Why not take that money? Why not take that money and instead of organizing meetings upon meetings, actually come into the riding and give it to the people?
Order. What's the point of order?
The witness has answered the question many times, and it's
Sorry,
relevant to the
correct.
mandate.
It is not a point of order. Continue, Ms. Kobana. But I would remind members again to not speak over one another for the benefit of the interpretation. We need interpretation to conduct a meeting. You have the floor.
Clarify my question. Okay. Yeah, I just think it's very hard to justify that expense to somebody who's struggling from homelessness and say that your government spent $97,000 learning about their homelessness. There is no justification. Switching topics, the Missing Middle Initiative told Canadians that, quote, the real crash is still ahead. New condo sales are down 89%, ground-oriented sales down 65%, guaranteeing an even deeper downturn in 2026 and beyond, end of quote. Do you agree with the industry experts that Canadians need to prepare for an even worse housing crisis?
Well, as I've said earlier, we are in a housing crisis that has been decades in the making. It's not something we solve overnight, but we have to be relentless in investing in affordable housing. Build Canada Homes is focused on non-market housing, and the Government of Canada has never had a laser focus on non-market housing. We now have a one-stop shop that is focused on delivering that affordable housing at scale. And that's a huge part of the housing crunch that we face. The market is facing real challenges in Vancouver and Toronto. And that is something that CMHC is helping with the apartment construction loan program to make sure that many of those developers can build rental housing on the projects that otherwise would not work as condos. The market goes through cycles, and we've been very fortunate as a country to have decades of the market being stable and growing.
Minister,
Unfortunately, that's created
if I may,
affordability
I don't
challenges.
have a lot of time. If
and
I
right
may
now,
ask a
the
follow-up
affordability
question?
is improving across the country in terms of markets.
In the GTA specifically, housing starts are decreasing. We know that. My particular concern, and I do get calls from constituents of mine who work for different companies that manufacture their doors or the windows or the floors, is that their shifts are decreasing. They are having talks about shutting down. All that skilled labor is going to be lost. That productivity, that capacity, rather, is going to be lost. We are not moving at the speeds that you promised.
Cabena, you're well over your time. We will now thank you, Minister. Madame Katrakis, 4 or 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, and to the officials for being here this afternoon. For many of us on the committee, I'm sure many of us have worked in the private sector. And when I hear my colleagues, my honorable colleagues from the Conservative Party, talking about $97,000 investment for our very professional, very devoted public servants attending meetings that are going to make them even better because they're hearing from specialists. And I know that, maybe in the question they say inspiration. I was in the private sector for many, many years. I worked at CIBC Wood Gundy and Raymond James. I was managing teams of 200, and any time there was an opportunity for my staff to become better and better informed, that was not an expense, it was an investment. So I commend you and the officials for taking that opportunity to do that, because homelessness is a big issue in our country, and we want to make sure that we, with the amount of money that is going to be invested to get it right, I think $97,000 is a drop in it's right. It's a lot for homeless people, but we are talking about making sure that we get this right from the get-go. Minister, earlier this week, I had the opportunity to announce on your behalf, actually, on Monday, this past Monday, a $20 million federal investment to create 101 affordable homes in my riding in Vimy and Laval. All 3 levels of government were there. Minister Proulx was there. Mayor Stéphane Boyer was there. Minister Christopher Skeet was there. And together with the developer, who said that he saved that project from not going forward because the previous developer ran into problems, so they had to save this project. And I'm very happy. I was very happy to be there to make that announcement. Could you share with the committee how this project reflects the goals of the National Housing Strategy and how similar communities across the country can expect to benefit from this approach?
Certainly, thanks to the member for the question, and I couldn't agree more in terms of the importance of investing in our people and doing their work even better. With the Affordable Housing Fund projects, like the one that you announced in your community, those projects are really how we're delivering right now on affordable housing at scale. Build Canada Homes is the next phase, but right now the Affordable Housing Fund is delivering billions of dollars of investment in affordable homes. Many of those projects are a mix, so there is private sector builders that we're giving lots of opportunities to, but they include a mix of market and below market housing. And again, this has been a very successful and large scale program as part of the National Housing Strategy. We want to see that kind of work basically scale up with Build Canada Homes through a different portal, but similar types of projects that have opportunities for mix of housing, mix of incomes, but we have to achieve significantly more non-market housing. We need more co-op housing, we need more student housing, we need seniors housing. Really, anyone that is, and about half of Canadians need some help with their housing cost. That's what we're trying to address here with Build Canada Homes. And building off of the success from the Affordable Housing Fund. Many of those projects are progressing right now through funding, through investment, and that will continue for the next couple of years as Build Canada Homes scales up the work and really takes over the focus on affordable housing.
Great. We also hear often about the youth and how right now homes are so expensive that they cannot afford to buy their first home. So Build Canada Homes not only helps increase the housing supply, but it also creates good Canadian jobs in the trades, opportunities that many young people can benefit from. Could you speak to how the program is supporting both affordable housing and meaningful employment for the next generation?
Thank you to the member for the question. It's a really critical component. Housing is at the center of Canada's economy, and so I share the concerns of all the members when we have challenges on the market side right now in Vancouver and Toronto. We've got to look at that and figure out how we turn that around. We are investing first and foremost, though, in tackling the affordability crunch that we have. That does take a lot of jobs, a lot of people contributing at all different levels, from the supply chain to the design and engineering of projects to the construction and ultimately the operations of the buildings. So many jobs, a huge component. If you add it all up, it's the largest industry in Canada. And in these times, it's an industry that we have far more control over than our trade, particularly related to the United States. We are feeling some impacts from U.S. Tariffs, obviously with softwood, steel, and aluminum. And we need to be building our industry, home building industry, stronger as a result of that.
Thank you, Madame Katrakis. Now I'm going to give one short question to each side. Keep it under 2 minutes to wrap it up. So we'll begin with Mr. Ho.
So, Minister, you're spending $219 million per year on a fourth housing bureaucracy, the so-called Build Canada Homes. And what does it do that the last three Liberal housing bureaucracies couldn't do? I mean, you're burning through the equivalent of $4 million per week. And this isn't money for housing or for municipalities. This is money just to pay the salaries of bureaucrats and other overhead. So I just want to get an understanding where that money is going.
Build Canada Homes is a new agency that is scaling up the investments in affordable housing across Canada, and it's offering to our builders, to our building partners, home building partners, a one-stop shop for them to advance their affordable housing projects as fast as they can.
What has this new Liberal bureaucracy achieved in the last week, would you say?
Well, we've already announced a whole set of projects, six locations across Canada on Canada Lands Company land, federal land.
That the other bureaucracies that preceded it could not do.
He's calling the partisan.
Build Canada Homes is focused on affordable housing. The government of Canada has not had an agency that's entirely focused on affordable housing for many decades. That's been spread among a number of different agencies and departments, and what we want to do is make sure we've got focus, we have a nimble organization that can get affordable housing built at scale as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible.
$219 million doesn't seem very nimble to me, or to the average Canadian taxpayer. Thank you.
Minister, if you'll choose.
I think it will be a very efficient use of taxpayer dollars when you stack it up against the volume of affordable housing that is going to be built in these years to come. I think it'll be a great investment.
Thank you, Mr. Ho. Ms. Fancy, for 2 minutes.
Yes. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through you, thank you for being here today, Mr. Robertson. And I know the thing that I'm excited most about Build Canada Homes for my families in South Shore, St. Margaret's, and Nova Scotia is the Build Community Strong Fund. I'd like to give you the rest of the time today. This is what excites me. What excites you about this fund? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The Build Community Strong Fund is a $51 billion fund that is in budget 2025, and that really is focused on housing enabling infrastructure, so infrastructure that can accelerate the housing that we build across the country, water, wastewater, stormwater infrastructure. There's a community stream that is basically the Canada Community Building Fund, the CCBF, evolving into this new stream. And that is delivering a wide variety of infrastructure at a community level, giving a lot of flexibility to communities and going direct. We also have a provincial territorial stream. That stream is also addressing health and education needs at a provincial and territorial level. So again, a lot of flexibility and partnerships with the provinces and territories. They will work with local governments through that stream, as well as a direct delivery stream, again, that goes straight to communities for regionally significant infrastructure. So it's a very, very large new infrastructure investment across government, focused on those partnerships with other levels of government at a big scale, but also having the flexibility and making sure we're doing everything we can to tie it to getting more housing and complete communities built that support that housing.
I know for me as a former educator, seeing us helping out with the schools is going to be huge for communities in my area. So thank you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Fancy. To conclude, Madame Gill, pour 2 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Final question for you, Mr. Minister. On the government's objectives related to Build Canada Homes and their customers who have special needs. Earlier, you mentioned students. But what about people with disabilities who want adaptive or adaptable housing? I'm also thinking about seniors. What are the goals of the programs to serve them?
Merci pour la question.
Thank you for your question. This is very important for us.
We're addressing accessibility, and so with proposals coming in, again, we are providing a lot of flexibility. So proposals come in and will be basically vetted against the investment policy, which has all these criteria. Accessibility is an important criteria. We want to make sure that we meet the standard with accessibility for those Canadians who that's a critical part of what we build, as well as for seniors and youth. I think there will be a constant review of the balance of projects and what they're delivering for Canadians to make sure that we're reaching everybody with affordable housing that's needed and the types of housing that's needed for those people.
Est-ce que ça veut dire que le gouvernement, avec le programme...
Does that mean that with this program, the government has a precise objective? Because there's a lot of demand for adaptive or adaptable housing. Is there a goal, or is it based on the request for proposal and when you receive? Or will there be funds allocated and earmarked for certain types of housing? And there's a difference between adaptable and adapted housing. And that's also very important for the groups that have reached out to us. Thank you.
Chair. In addition to calling into question the integrity of the clerk last week at the last meeting, they've just called into question the nonpartisan, well-established nature of the public service. This is absolutely unacceptable. This is a slippery slope, Mr. President.
Madame de Rocher, that is not... Excuse, order, members, order. Members, order, please. Madame Gill, did you conclude your question?
En fait, Monsieur le Président...
Well, Mr. Chair, I thought that I had ended my question, the question that the minister was about to respond. I think he was the one interrupted.
Respond to the question in writing, Mr. Minister. We are concluded. If you would respond in writing, thank you. With that, thank you. We conclude the first hour of today's meeting. I will suspend for 4 minutes while we transition. Suspend. The second hour of today's meeting. And the second hour is the impacts of the temporary foreign worker program on the labor market. Before resuming, I would like to take a few moments for the benefit of those appearing virtually. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those of you participating by video conference, you have the option to participate in the official language of your choice. Click on the globe icon at the bottom of your surface. Choose the official language that you wish to participate in. If there is an interruption in translation, please get my attention by using the raised hand symbol, and I will suspend while we are getting it corrected. As well, please direct all questions through I, the chair. Wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. We have three witnesses this afternoon from the Association for the Rights of Household and Farm Workers, Benedict Carol Zay, Education and Mobilization Officer. From the Iron Workers Local 97, Doug Parton, Business Manager and Financial Secretary. MRCD Migani, Maggie Richor, Prefect. You each have 5 minutes. We will begin with Madame Z for 5 minutes for your opening statements. Madame, you have the floor.
Dear Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for having invited me to appear here. I came to Canada on a 2-year closed temporary work permit. The living conditions associated with this status limited my quality of work, my productivity, and real opportunities in the labor market. I will explain how permanent status has positively transformed my experience in Canada. Today, I will talk about two realities of two programs, one that is inhumane and destroys workers' rights and human dignity, and another that is respectable, supports the integration of workers into the labor market while respecting their rights and strengthens the economy without reducing them to slavery. In 2016, in my country of origin, I paid more than $10,000 to my employer for a job offer that would allow me to obtain a work permit in the country of my dreams, Canada. I came to Canada for opportunities and a better future for my children. I signed a contract that provided details on my salary, rest periods, vacation time, housing. But after I arrived in Canada, my employer informed me that this contract was not valid. I was confined and forbidden from having a cell phone, and he forced me to work 7 days a week at his disposal without breaks, 70, 80 hours a week. In addition to my daily tasks in the contract, my employer wanted me to take care of his residence, his garden, his woodworking shop, and his son's farm. I will spare you the psychological, sexual, and physical abuse that I endured. However, the committee can consult my account in Section 2.9 of the 2025 Amnesty International report that I have sent to the committee. After 18 months in slave-like conditions, my health deteriorated. My employer threatened to send me back to Cameroon if I became sick, and I had to keep working until I ended up in the hospital. Finally, a stranger took me away from this and saved my life. I found myself in an irregular migratory situation. My employer canceled my contract. The power imbalance between me and my employer created by the closed permit and temporary status meant that the rights and protections provided by law were not provided to me. Like many workers, I paid the price with my physical and mental health. In 2021, thanks to the Pandemic Healthcare Worker Recognition Program, I obtained my permanent residency. However, as most workers on closed permits have very limited or no access to permanent status. Permanent status has been a positive transformation, allowing me to continue my nursing studies and envision a professional future that matched my skills and ambitions. Because I did not have a closed permit, I began working in parallel with human rights organizations while volunteering to contribute to my community. But the best part is on the family front. My children were able to join me here in Canada, which brings stability and security for my whole family. It gave me the freedom to speak about my traumatic experience on a closed permit. Before, I had to remain silent for fear of being deported from Canada. Finally, permanent status gave me control over my life and the right to have access to health care without fear of reprisals. In short, I will not talk about the temporary foreign worker program and how it affects the labor market as a whole. I can only talk about my own experience. We often hear people say that foreign workers accept jobs that citizens and permanent residents refuse, as if we had an innate tolerance for exploitation and mistreatment, but that's not true. When I signed up to work in Canada, I knew that I would work hard, but I did not expect my rights to be violated. My rights were not respected. So when employers say that they cannot find citizens and permanent residents to work, this is what I'm asking. Are they really unavailable, or do employers have unreasonable expectations that someone with a choice would not accept? My apologies. I did not want to interrupt you, but it might be for the interpreters, the sound comes and goes, and they may be feedback shocks. May I continue? Yes, you may continue. In closing, I knew that I would work hard coming to Canada, but I did not think that my rights would be violated. I thought my rights would be expected, but that did not happen. So when employers say that they cannot find people to work, here's what I'm asking. Are they actually unavailable, or do employers have immoral expectations that someone with a choice would not accept? Are they instead looking for human beings who will work without freedom and rights, or are they simply looking for slaves? When humans are divided into two classes of workers and one is deprived of fundamental rights and made vulnerable to systemic violations, we must expect this to have a negative impact on the rights, conditions, and quality of jobs for all workers. In order for everyone to be able to work with dignity and safety, the fundamental rights of all must be respected. Thank you for your time and for your attention to this issue.
Ms. Zay.
Thank you, Ms. Zay.
Workers, 5 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you to all members of the committee for this opportunity. I want to begin by expressing my appreciation for the committee's commitment to examining the temporary foreign worker program and its impact on Canada's labor market. Your willingness to look closely at how the program is used and misused means a great deal to the workers and apprentices I represent in British Columbia. Thank you for taking this issue seriously. My name is Doug Parton, and I'm the business manager of Local 97, the Ironworkers in British Columbia, representing more than 2,400 members across BC. Our members build bridges, towers, dams, LNG sites, public transit, and industrial projects that keep our province and country powered and moving. Ironworkers take great pride in our craft. We invest heavily in apprenticeship, skills development, safety. Every person in our trade knows that they're part of something bigger, building communities and building Canada. That is why I appreciate the committee's work on this study, because the way the temporary foreign worker program's construction stream currently operates affects every part of our workforce, including safety, training, and the ability to provide for our families. The construction stream was supposed to be a measure of last resort when no local labor was available. But in British Columbia, and particularly in our trade, it has been used far too often and not as intended. Employers are using this program as a business model for cheaper, untrained labor. They are claiming shortages that do not exist and using TFWs to bypass Canadian workers who are ready, available, and fully trained workers that we have invested in. The federal job bank data compounds this problem. The posted wages are as much as $10.44 per hour below what workers actually earn under collective agreements. That flawed benchmark allows employers to justify bringing TFWs while avoiding the real prevailing wages that have been freely negotiated and truly reflect the market. These agreements would not exist if they did not reflect actual market conditions. This is not just about fairness, it's about ability to make a living. When federal wage benchmarks undervalue construction work and ignore negotiated benefit packages, it drives down the market and leaves workers struggling to afford housing, food, transportations in the same communities they helped build. Meanwhile, the number of TFWs in the construction stream remains disproportionately high, despite strong local workforce and record investments in training by the unionized construction sector. Every unnecessary LMIA approval weakens apprenticeship recruitment, undermines pathways for young Canadians, and creates unsafe work site where workers may not be familiar with Canadian safety standards or expectations. Safety is not negotiable in our trade. Ironworking is dangerous, technical, and demands rigorous training. When loopholes allow unverified labor onto work sites, everybody is at risk. Safety cannot be sacrificed for cost savings. This is why I'm grateful for the committee has chosen to study this issue. Your attention gives us hope that meaningful reform is possible. Our recommendations remain straightforward. Require union and local building trades consultation before approving any trade-related LMIA, so accurate assessments of worker availability can be made. If Canadian workers are available, the employer should not be granted an LMIA. Replace the job bank wage standard with accurate, collectively bargained prevailing wages that reflect livable wage and real cost of living in regions like British Columbia. Restrict TFW access to employers who invest in training Canadians and who have clear apprenticeship plan to return back to a domestic workforce. And number 4, pause construction stream LMIA approvals while proper review and frameworks take place. We support an immigration done right. We respect every worker who contributes to building this country, but we must ensure that the system reflects Canadian values, fairness, safety, and opportunity for all. Our message is simple. Invest in Canadian workers first. When given the tools and training, we will meet the needs of this country with safe, skilled, homegrown workforce. To that end, Local 97 continues to be the #1 supplier of ironworkers in the province of BC, with an estimated 26,811,399 hours in the last 10 years. And to date, we have 3 temporary foreign workers. Certainly, at a time when 350 pulp mill workers are laid off on Vancouver Island, there's skills transfer that we can apply and simply upskill these unemployed workers. This is where our focus should be and not on the TFW program. And again, I thank you for all parties represented here today to look for a path forward. Thank you again for your time and continue to address this important issue.
Your pardon. We'll now go to Madame Richard. Madame Richard.
Ms. Richard, over to you. Hello, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for having me here. I am Richard, prefect of the Mégane RCM. The Northern Coast has a lot of resources and extremely vital communities. It is also facing a lot of challenges, for example, an aging population. We have over 203,000 square kilometers. We have many municipalities and also many indigenous communities. There are many municipalities, including Anticosti Island and Innu communities. Our economy relies on mining, fishery, and energy projects, as well as public services and a flourishing tourist sector. We contribute a lot to Quebec and Canada's GDP, despite the fact that we play a key role in economic development. We feel that our regional concerns are not taken into account in government decisions. So today, I would like to attract your decision on the Temporary Foreign Workers Program in rural regions like ours. This program, created to tackle labor shortages, is now essential for the economic survival of our businesses. The reduction and the caps threatens the vitality of our communities. In Mégane, the aging population and the demographic decline means that this drop is significantly hard for our businesses. Proximity and local services can only survive with temporary workers. Our markets and restaurants and businesses that depend on these workers and the tourist sector also depend on their contributions. Food processing and fishing also depends on them and have done so for many years. Modification to the program weakens them and may lead to a drop in services and also businesses shutting down. These people, temporary foreign workers, regardless of their country of origin or their status, are at the heart of our economy, our development, and the essence of our territory. They're only a small part of the non-permanent residents of Quebec, but they are essential for our SMEs. In our region, immigrants represent 1.4 part of the overall population, compared to 17% for all of Quebec, according to StatsCan. Talking to our chambers of commerce, we have seen that most businesses employ temporary foreign workers, and for 50% of them, it takes more than 6 months for them to recruit these workers. Without them, business will shut down, and people will leave our towns. It's not a luxury. They are essential to ensure our economic vitality and social cohesion. So it is essential to adapt policies and laws to local realities instead of having this one-size-fits-all policy. The government needs to pay attention to rural areas. Current policies like the federal 10% cap for low-wage streams is not adapted to our region. In places with low unemployment rates, that cap will not work. We ask that the cap be raised to 20, if not 30% for rural areas like ours. We ask administrative delays to be reduced, as well as as well as grandfather clauses. The program does not need to be a temporary solution. We also need to ensure that workers who want to settle here receive permanent residence. We also need to ensure that municipalities are involved in policies in order to ensure that decisions reflect the realities on the ground. Currently, changes to the program are bad for rural areas. They harm the services provided by our businesses and threaten the vitality of our towns. It needs to be part of a global strategy that develops our regions while protecting the rights of workers. So we ask you to review current policies in order to support rural areas, increase caps, accelerate the process, and to expedite PR for these people. They are essential to ensuring Quebec's economic vitality and the wealth of our regions. Thank you very much.
We'll now begin our 6-minute round with Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for coming. My question is for Mr. Parton. I'm wondering if in your jurisdiction you have any large companies that are using temporary foreign workers and competing with your contractors, your signatory contractors.
Absolutely. We do have one here, and in the last 12 years, I think they brought in 1,000 iron workers, and they all brought it in under the guise that there was no skilled Canadians to train Canadians. So they had to bring in the TFWs, 1,000 of them in the last 12 years to train Canadians. And I mean, if we bought that argument, certainly in over a 2-year or 3-year period, they would have developed a trained workforce, but simply they wouldn't stay with them. It's been a problem. And that one particular company in particular never supported an apprenticeship. They had one apprenticeship in the last 10 years, and it was a millwright just to keep their rebar machines running. So,
wow. Do you think that the temporary foreign worker program creates a race to the bottom with regards to wages and working conditions in labor markets across Canada?
Absolutely. It's a wage suppression, it's a business model, and it's about wages. I used to say, it's a greased one-way pole, right?
Do you find that workers are having to lower their value as workers to remain competitive in order to find work?
Well, certainly I could speak about our own situation in battling this issue on Vancouver Island. I mean, cost of bread, milk, and egg and cheese hasn't gone down on Vancouver Island. We've had to go over there and slash our collective agreement for those workers over there by $10, almost $10 an hour, just to remain competitive.
That's a pretty big impact. Unionized labor is critical to Canada's growth. Would you agree with that?
That's absolutely, it's central. It's, I believe we've always been the number one trainer, and certainly in BC, but in Canada as well. We are training the next generation of ironworkers, electricians, carpenters, and so on.
Do you believe that removing the TFW program would benefit Canadian workers, and if so, how?
I certainly think there needs to be a pause on it. There's been some, for 15 years, this crosses all party lines. I want to make that clear that, this has been a problem, and we've been at the forefront of this to try to make some changes there. I am encouraged by the recent events with the government, and obviously with cross parties that we're having a look at this. This not only, undercuts my workers and everyday work Canadians, but it does a disservice to the temporary foreign worker, as we heard in the young lady that spoke earlier on, that spoke first off. I mean, horrific. And it is not unusual for me to hear some of those stories myself in my position. And it needs to be revamped. Certainly, and with union labor, I think, from my lens, at the table as well.
So, with that contractor that you had mentioned that has had over 1,000 temporary foreign workers, have you ever reported that to any level of government, provincially or federally?
Yes, we've reported that federally, again, over the last 15 years. I mean, whether it was a conservative government at the time when we first started, or liberal governments. And it was a sticky, it's not a one size fits all. I only speak about construction because that's all I know. I'm not going to get into the fish processing or stuff like that. That's, I akin that to getting a carpenter to come over and wire your house. He just wouldn't do it, right?
No, I'm an electrician, so no. Do you find that, does the TFW program undermine the work that you do as a trade unionist to improve wages and improve working conditions for Canadian laborers?
Yeah, and again, but I don't want to undermine what it does, how it devalues the temporary foreign worker as well. These people are a captive workforce, and as we heard again, I keep going back to the young lady that spoke first. We hear this all the time. If they say something, they're on a plane. It shouldn't be in Canada. Not to mention what my job is to get the best working conditions for my members and workers, and even people that aren't my members that may be in the open shop. Rising tide lifts all ships, right?
Yeah. Do you believe that there is an over-reliance on the TFW program to the point where it has changed the realities on the ground for Canadian laborers and who are forced to compete against weaker wages?
Well, I could certainly speak on, at the risk of speaking on behalf of my contractors, which we in Local 97 here, we have over 240 contractors that we represent as well as our members. We hold them to a higher standard with apprenticeships and skills training and stuff that they have to pay into on an hourly basis so that we can continue and further the trade. When we have companies take advantage of the temporary foreign worker system where they can come in and undercut some wages as much as 50%, it makes it pretty hard for that good Canadian company that's done everything right, paid taxes in Canada. How do they compete, right? It's just it's a numbers game at that point. And we're living in the land. I mean, we're talking about condominiums and stuff. We're living in British Columbia, certainly. I'm sure you're well aware. The $1 million condo.
Thank you, Mr. Patton. Mr. Parton, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. We'll now move to Ms. Fancy for 6 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. And through you, Mr. Chair, I want to thank the witnesses for coming today. I also want to start by saying, it's really good to be back here today, as last week we kind of found ourselves a little blindsided, as well as our witnesses at the time, with the dilatory motion to adjourn because what we're seeing is the Conservative government have finally realized that they've weaponized immigration to the point where businesses are afraid and other witnesses are afraid to come forward to appear and discuss the need for the Temporary Foreign Workers Program. But I'd also like to mention as well, as some of you had noted in the beginning, that this program only makes up 1% of our workforce here. But for many rural regions like my own in South Shore, Nova Scotia, this is a very important program. Where I've heard from a lot of my constituents and businesses who have positively discussed temporary foreign workers and some of the ways that they want to further create efficiencies within this program, which is what we're doing within this study, which is why we voted for this block study today. So as the chair, former chair, now that I'm here serving, for the Rural Communities Foundation of Nova Scotia, as vice chair for our National Rural Caucus, and as a rural researcher on value-added systems, through you, Mr. Speaker, Rural Canada is speaking out. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. Rural Canada is speaking out, such as Mr. Osborne Burke of Nova Scotia, who has gone on BC to challenge Mr. Polyev on September 25th. I remember listening to this on my way to a constituency meeting and saying, Mr. Polyev, I'm sorry, but where are these workers where are these workers that are unemployed, that are looking for work? Contrary to what Mr. Polyev says, there's nobody else left here to work. We don't have that labor pool. We don't have that workforce in rural Nova Scotia. So my first question is for Madame Richard. In your opening statements and reading your background, it seems like we're coming from very similar type of ridings or type of regions and areas. I was wondering if you could start today by answering the question of what labor market challenges have rural communities been experiencing, and how does this differ from some of the more urban areas?
Bien évidemment, comme je l'ai
As I have explained, in the northern coast, we are the only region in Quebec that saw a demographic decline in the past few years. So our reality is different from major cities that needs to deal with a large influx of immigrants, often uncontrolled. If we want to welcome temporary foreign workers, we want to give them the tools to settle here. I think that we give them experiences that are better compared to the rest of Canada. There are these large spaces. Every person makes a difference in our world compared to places like cities. We hope that these programs take into account the realities of each of Canada's regions because we are ready. We need them. They can make a real difference in our communities. We see already. I was able to talk with a lot of them, as well as with business owners. We see the ability to welcome them here as a privilege.
Thank you very much for that. And you also mentioned in the beginning, in your opening statement, about the term vitality. So in terms of vitality, I'm wondering what are some of your recommendations for the continued vitality of rural areas in Canada, while also mitigating any of the negative impacts that temporary foreign worker programs might have on broader labor markets?
Ben, nous, de notre côté, les municipalités.
Us, RCMs, we work hard to start housing projects so that we can take in more people here. Regardless of where they come from, we want to have a welcoming environment. So we're working on it to adapt everything. But for us, it's a matter of survival. Our only goal is to stop the demographic decline. We need everyone. We are often mining towns with these large hydroelectric projects that pay well. So when we talk about food security, the issue goes all the way to there. I can give you examples of businesses who need to hire retirees and young students. And there are issues related to food security. Because we are a welcoming environment, we allow people who settle to be directly involved. Earlier, the other witness talked about volunteering. We have a system. We work very hard in our RCMs to create good welcoming programs to ensure that people can integrate well. And I think that properly integrating people and helping them learn French will make a real difference. And that's how they will feel at home and how they will want to stay here.
Oh, that was quick,
Time.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Madame Gill, pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to thank our witnesses for being here and for talking about the TFWP. I'm happy to hear testimonies that are diverse because that will allow us to debunk stereotypes that we often hear about the program and then improve the program. Ms. Richard and myself live in the same immense region. We also share the challenges that we face here, but there are also a lot of opportunities. You made many recommendations. I'm sure that you have examples, concrete examples that you can provide us, so we can measure the impact of the temporary foreign workers program. For example, in fisheries, what will happen if no one comes to work here? And then there's the impact on labor, but you also said that you met a lot of people. I have also met many temporary foreign workers. Can you also talk about their experiences? Yes, their experiences may be different, but they can also be very good for everyone. Of course, I have many examples. When I say that this is a topic that is very important for us, it's very important for immigrants, but also businesses and for people. When people call me, they are desperate. They don't understand. They are also distressed. Often they grow very close to these immigrants. They are part of a team, but also part of the community. These are business owners who, over decades, they are family businesses. They built these businesses over decades, and they often have to find innovative solutions to try to tackle the labor shortage in remote areas. And the solution that they have found is welcoming immigrants. For them, this is a source of hope to serve people. And by modifying it, business owners will have to make tough choices. They will have to cut services as well as hours. They may have to shut down parts of their business. Maybe they will have to shut down the entire business. We talked about the 10% or the 20%. But the rest of the 80% of the local population is also impacted by these changes. If you, for example, change your opening hours, customers are impacted. So there's a snowball effect. Despite everything we have done to try to welcome immigrants, we saw that we shot ourselves in the foot because business owners do not have any other solutions. It is our only solution here. That's deeply unfortunate. And I hope that they will be able to talk to you. I can talk about a local restaurant. It is the only restaurant in my region that's open 7 days out of 7, and that serves 3 meals a day. They serve workers as well as tourists. They've been in business for 40 years. But if the act as it is implemented, then they will have to cut their hours. And that's really dramatic for people. There's also another restaurant called Saint-Julie, as well as food markets. These people all called me in desperation. Thank you, Ms. Richard. And I would like to re-put this in context. Often we talk about one restaurant When you live in my neck of the woods, sometimes you need to drive 100 kilometers to get gas or to find food. Sometimes you have to drive up to 200 kilometers. You talked about security. Often in a community, there's only one restaurant or one food market that's smaller than what you find here because these are towns of 200 to 300 people. I'm thinking about the fisheries industry. For example, in my region, there's a food processing industry. However, if they do not have workers anymore, and we saw with suspended permits for Mexican workers, it led to a crisis here. I will always remember February 29th. They forgot about fisheries and agriculture, and we saw the impacts at home. Does it also mean that industries will leave? Or that people in the fishery sector cannot even put their catch on land? Can you talk about the effects of all of this? Yes. More than 80 people work in food processing. They play an extremely important role in that seasonal industry. And I was able to help these people teach French. And it was such a great experience. A lot of people came back year after year. And what I have noticed, it's that ultimately these people want to come here. They want to settle with their families. They want to bring in their children and their partners and be part of our economy and of our vitality. That's what I will always remember. I will always remember their smiles and their willingness to work in these exceptional working conditions. We recognize their contributions, and they are very grateful for us as a welcoming region. And these policy changes jeopardize many sectors, and I am worried about the future, and I'm worried about the impacts on local businesses, as well as the impacts on our people. Losing services on such a large rest of land. For example, my RCM has 380 kilometers of coast. Thank you. You're out of time. Thank you, Madam Jill.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses. I particularly appreciate that we have someone that has actually been through the program and seen some of its impacts on the individual that's testifying here. So my questions will start at least going to Ms. Zay. Maybe just by way of preamble, I think it's important to identify the fact that the Temporary Foreign Worker Program is one of a suite of different immigration programs. Nobody here is proposing the elimination of all categories of international recruitment, but we are talking about a particular program with particular problems with it. And I think the testimony has identified those problems. Has identified the need for recruitment tools for people to come from out of region or from elsewhere in certain cases, but it's identified particular problems with the Temporary Foreign Worker Program. Ms. Zay, your testimony echoes what we've heard from some economists during previous work this committee's done on youth unemployment. And that is to say that the particular structure of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program creates power imbalances because normally there are lots of complex power dynamics involving employers and employees, but one of the powers that an employee has is choice. They can leave their job and find another job, and of course, in an environment with high unemployment, that employee has less power, and of low unemployment, that employee has relatively more power because it's easier for them to go to a different job. But the temporary foreign worker case that you're describing is unique because the worker has so little power because their immigration status is tied to their employment with a particular employer. There would be many alternatives in terms of programs that would still allow people to be recruited to fill genuine skill gaps. But you're talking about, I think, a serious social justice issue that is exaggerated power imbalance between workers and their employers that results from the architecture of this program. So I wonder if you want to, if you think I've got that right, if you want to say more about that, about how, in particular, the structure of this program and the power imbalances create unique challenges and dynamics, and about how there would be alternatives that allow workers to fill genuine skill gaps that don't involve that power imbalance.
Je vous remercie et je remercie
Thank you for your question. We want to come to Canada to work, but with rights. We want to be respected. We want to be treated like people. But this program creates a hierarchy where employers have more power. For example, when you have an employer with bad intentions, then we are mistreated. I was sexually assaulted. I was turned into a slave. I was isolated. And you couldn't just leave and work somewhere else. A lot of people wanted to hire me, and it wasn't that I was going to do a bad job. I was tied to my employer. My employer wanted to have me as a slave. They made me work 90-hour weeks, and they also made me do unpaid labor. That person just had a slave who was not allowed to go home and who had to be the victim of all kinds of injustices because that person paid a lot of money to that business and had to leave their children behind. But with an open permit, with a pathway to permanent residency, then I would have stayed because I like working. I came to Canada to work. It would have allowed me to integrate in an easier fashion. It would have allowed me to bring my children and to stay there. I would have been able to volunteer. Workers want to come here to work, but they want to be treated like people. They wanted to be treated like all other human beings.
I think people watching this may say, most employers are good people, they have good intentions, and they're not like the person you described. And I think that's very true. But the issue is the structure of the program creates a power imbalance, which means in cases where people are treated badly, they don't have recourse. But if you used different channels, if you didn't use this deeply flawed structure, then people would be in a stronger position to address problems where those problems emerge. Would you agree?
Je suis tout à fait d'accord.
I agree. If the program was better structured, with a pathway to permanent residency with open permits, then a lot of people will be able to come here to work, integrate, and also stay in the areas where they were recruited. I left because I was mistreated. It's the power that you give to employers to dominate and to have all the powers over the employee. That is the problem. But if you recruited people, thank you, Ms. Zay.
Rocher for 5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Et,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to thank the witnesses for being here today. I think that you have clearly told us that the temporary foreign worker program issue is a very complicated one. There is no one single solution to it all. There are regional differences. And I will get back to you, Ms. Zay, and what you went through. There are clearly abuses. The temporary foreign worker program is not an immigration program. It's a program to fulfill needs in certain industries. And thank you for bringing it up too, Ms. Richard. This is the interpretation. This is the interpretation. Can you hear the interpretation?
Okay.
The labor shortage jeopardizes the survival of businesses and even communities. So it's critical that we use the time we have here to, and I hope we will be able to do so, to propose real recommendations and create real studies and set aside partisanship. I hope we can do that here because this issue is too important. Ms. Zay. what you went through is absolutely unacceptable. So I want to make that very clear. We know that more needs to be done to stop the abuses that we have heard. And as my colleague Mr. Genuis said, even though most employers are good employers, there are still abuses. And that's why we created the support program for migratory workers. We're also working with provinces who are responsible for labor conditions and housing. That is essential. They play a key role. And thank you for having shared your story. More needs to be done. I think we can also do more. I would like to hear what you have to say based on your experience, because I know that you're working closely with workers on the ground. Since these abuses have become more public, have you seen an increased amount of reported cases? Have you seen that more people are now aware that the federal government has created tools to report abuses? Yes and no. For example, in Montreal, where I am now, for a French speaker like me, it's quite easy to find where you can go seek help. But I was in a region, and a lot of temporary foreign workers are in rural areas, and most of them do not speak French. So a lot of them won't be able to know. Solutions are theoretical, but not always executable. When I came here, I spoke French, but I didn't know where to go for help because I was in a rural area. The current program as it is means that employees do not know how to seek help, where to report abuses. The program means that the employee is silenced by fear. Thank you, Ms. If I understand correctly, maybe more work needs to be done when it comes to increasing more awareness and to spread information, especially in rural areas, so workers know what to do. For example, a hotline, so employees know where to find information. So do you believe that if we had more strict rules for the LMIA process, would that help protect workers in vulnerable sectors? I think so. If there's a better study on the impact on the labor force. For example, what Ms. Richard suggested, in her neck of the woods, they need workers, as well as workers who can integrate. So bring in workers where people truly need them and give them more flexibility, because a lot of them want to integrate. Some also just want to come here on a seasonal basis. We need to do studies on all of those cases so people know why they're here to work, where they are, as well as possibilities to integrate or leave if they're being abused. Thank you, Ms. Zugash and Ms. Zay. Ms. Gill, you have 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have another question for Ms. Richard. Earlier, you mentioned that when it comes to temporary foreign workers who leave and the program that we know now with the reduced caps, those things impact everyone. It impacts the workers. It also impacts their colleagues as well as businesses. Do you feel that it also impacts the temporary foreign workers themselves? In my case, I saw families that were separated. For example, there's a temporary foreign worker who brings their partner. Can you talk more about that? Of course, they're impacted. I'm not in their shoes, but I feel that they're very stressed by the situation. There's a lot of uncertainty. There are employees who will have to renew their permits in the next few weeks, and they don't know if they would be able to stay. These are very stressful moments because they don't know what to expect. They want to stay here. They want to settle here. They want to grow in this community. I think a lot about our business owners as well as those workers who are essential for our economic development. And also reducing the renewal process from 3 years to 1 year, that also creates a lot of stress. It also creates more paperwork for businesses who need temporary foreign workers. Business owners who have told me, businesses have told me about that. I would like to give a shout out to those businesses. For example, Ms. Petipa from the restaurant La Promenade. If that restaurant closed down, the entire community would feel it, and we don't want that. We want to see solutions. So, of course, you said that you don't want to see a one-size-fits-all policy, but can you talk about the idea that young people cannot find jobs because of temporary foreign workers? So the idea that there will be a competition between young people and temporary foreign workers. No, this is not the case over here. There's enough work for everyone. In all the businesses that I talked about, there are vacancies. There are few businesses that have no vacancies, but most businesses are always looking for workers. So we need teenagers, we need young people to work. We also need retirees to fill gaps to ensure that our businesses stay open. There's no competition. Thank you, Ms. Gill.
With Mr. Janis, 3 minutes, then to Mr. Joseph for 3. Mr. Janis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and this has been a really interesting discussion. I do want to refocus again the fact that the purpose of this study is to evaluate the performance and the issues around the temporary foreign worker program. And there are, of course, vast differences in this country. There are variations in terms of the employment rates. There are skill needs, and recognizing the high level of unemployment for young people, I think we need new, bold, creative policies to help young people have the skills and be able to go to the regions where they can take these jobs. And our proposals around the temporary foreign worker program have included extending existing permits in regions of low unemployment, because we understand the need for those adaptations and the timelines required. But we also can't go on with a present reality in which we have both issues of skill gaps and geography gaps and extremely high youth unemployment. So we need to have solutions that don't ignore that problem, that seek to solve that problem. In the time I have left, I want to go to Mr. Parton, just on the issue of the integrity of the existing program, and coming back to this issue of, is the program working the way it's currently structured? You talked about wages being offered that are below the rates that have been negotiated. That's not supposed to happen. You've talked about Canadians being bypassed. That's not supposed to happen. I think maybe the government would come back and say, yeah, well, these are abuses of the program. But certainly these are abuses of the program. But the problem is that the structure of the program seems to allow these kinds of abuses, because when you have power imbalances, but also when you have situations where an employer puts a job on a job bank, they might get a lot of applications, but they ignore those applications from Canadians, and then they can proceed to say, well, we didn't find an appropriate application. Do you think there are problems with the structure of the program around integrity, around facilitating enforcement of these rules? And is it salvageable, or does there need to be a broader rethink?
I do think there's problems with it, and I think you're absolutely correct there. But I think that's why we're here today, and I think I think this government and with the help of the opposition as well, I think there's a newfound vigor, I guess, to fix the problems of the past, and we need to look backwards to see where those mistakes have occurred. But looking forward, I think we can fix this. I mean, we talk about labor shortage. I know, if I go back to that 1,000 people or 1,000 TFWs, that one company I spoke about, last year I put through 132 young Canadians, men, young ladies, young men. 102 are still with me. That's an 80% retention rate. Over 10 years, there's your 1,000 people. So from my lens in the construction industry specifically, we haven't had a skill shortage. We can fix this problem. We still have the tools to make this work. And it may be a time when there's a TFW need, but the bill and trade certainly needs to be central to that.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Patton. Thank you, Mr. Janice. We'll conclude. Monsieur Joseph, pour 3 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to talk to Ms. Richard. I want to refer to an answer that she provided to my honorable colleague. She talked about the survival of her region. There's an article that said that Pierre Poilievre was going to end the temporary foreign worker program because Poilievre said to completely end that program. What would be the impact on your region if the Conservative Party's idea is implemented? Would have a huge impact if that program is ended. Throughout my time here, I said that these programs are essential for local businesses. The Northern Coast actively contributes to the development of the Canadian economy. There are electric projects. There are mining projects. If we want to contribute to the country's economic development, there needs to be healthy SMEs. And to do so, we need to stop the demographic decline. And we need to take in people who want to actively partake in our development and to have good lives. So that program is critical for us. The same goes for immigration. We understand that temporary foreign workers are critical for your economy. Thank you for being honest. If I may, they're also important at the social level. We often talk about economics, but for me, the social aspect is also really important. That's why we want to ensure proper integration so that these people also bring in their culture to our economic fabric. I would like to apologize to Ms. Zay for everything that has happened to you. But please know that our government is working very hard to ensure this does not happen again. Thank you, Ms. Zay. Thank you for your testimony. I would like to thank you as well. I have one other thing to add. I don't think that the issue is with the program. Other testimonies have shown that people need workers. The problem is that there is a government who does not recognize that people who come here are workers and have the right to choose. They want to integrate, but they may also choose to leave. And they need to have the opportunity to live like humans and the opportunity to leave if they end up with an employer with ill intentions. The program needs to be reviewed to ensure that there are no closed permits, but rather open permits. Thank you, Ms. Zay. Thank you, Mr. Joseph.
Our next meeting is December the 9th, where we will continue our
La prochaine réunion.
the committee to adjourn. Adjourn. Good.